so I thought I had the perfect life planned out. I'm an event planner, so organizing my own wedding should have been easy, right? Wrong. 3 days before my dream wedding, I discovered my sister had been sleeping with my fiancé the entire week leading up to our big day. Not just a one-night mistake, a full week of betrayal, while I was running around finalizing centerpieces and seating charts. The worst part? She was supposed to be my maid of honor. I had to choose between keeping my family together and keeping my dignity intact. Spoiler alert. I chose myself, and it was the best decision I ever made. So I'm Nicole, 27, event planner. I've been in the business for 5 years now, and I absolutely love what I do. There's something magical about taking someone's vision and making it come to life, especially for weddings. I've planned everything from intimate backyard ceremonies to massive ballroom affairs with 300 guests. My own wedding was supposed to be the culmination of everything I'd learned. I had been with Jake for 3 years, and when he proposed last Christmas, I was over the moon. We set the date for June 30th, and I threw myself into planning mode immediately. I wanted everything to be perfect: the flowers, the music, the food. Even the weather forecast looked promising. My sister Emma had always been my closest friend growing up. She's 2 years younger than me, and we'd been through everything together. When Jake proposed, the first person I called was Emma. She screamed with excitement and immediately asked if she could be my maid of honor. Of course I said yes. The week before the wedding was supposed to be relaxing. Jake had planned a bachelor week with his friends. Nothing crazy, just some golf and hanging out. I was using the time to handle last-minute details and spend quality time with Emma before the big day. We had planned to go dress shopping one more time to make sure her maid of honor dress fit perfectly. Looking back now, I should have noticed the signs. Emma had been acting weird for weeks, avoiding my calls and seeming distracted whenever we talked about wedding plans. But I was so caught up in my own excitement that I missed all the red flags. The morning of June 28th started out perfectly normal. I woke up early, made my usual coffee, and headed to the bridal shop to meet Emma. We had an appointment at 10 a.m. to do a final fitting for her dress and pick up my wedding shoes that had needed a small adjustment. I got to the shop first and waited outside, checking my phone for the 100th time that morning. Emma was running about 10 minutes late, which wasn't unusual for her. When she finally showed up, something felt off immediately. She looked pale and kept avoiding eye contact with me. I asked her if she was feeling okay, and she just mumbled something about not sleeping well. We went inside, and the shop owner brought out Emma's dress. It was a beautiful dusty rose color that complemented her skin tone perfectly. But when she tried it on, she just stood there staring at herself in the mirror with this weird expression. I told her she looked gorgeous and asked if the fit felt right. She nodded but didn't say anything else. The whole interaction felt stilted and awkward. I kept trying to make conversation about the wedding, asking if she was excited about her speech and if she had picked up her shoes yet. Emma gave me short, one-word answers to everything. Finally, I asked her directly what was wrong. She said nothing was wrong, but her voice cracked when she said it. I could tell she was lying. We finished at the bridal shop and walked to a nearby coffee place. I ordered us both lattes and found a quiet corner table. I told Emma that I could tell something was bothering her, and that she could talk to me about anything. She just sat there stirring her coffee and looking miserable. After about 5 minutes of silence, she looked up at me with tears in her eyes. She said she had something she needed to tell me but didn't know how. My stomach immediately dropped because I could tell from her expression that it was something bad. I told her to just say whatever it was. She took a deep breath and said she had made a terrible mistake. She said she had been with Jake. At first, I didn't understand what she meant. I asked her to clarify, thinking maybe they had run into each other somewhere. Then she said the words that changed everything. She told me she had slept with Jake. Not just once but multiple times throughout the entire bachelor week. She said it started Monday night when she ran into him at a bar, and it had been happening every night since then. I felt like the world stopped moving. I asked her if she was serious and she nodded while crying. She said she was so sorry and that she never meant for it to happen. She said they were both drunk the first time and then it just kept happening. I couldn't process what she was telling me. This was my sister, my maid of honor, telling me she had been having an affair with my fiancé for an entire week. The wedding was in 2 days. All the guests were already in town. Everything was paid for and ready to go. I asked her why she was telling me now, and she said she couldn't go through with standing next to me at the altar knowing what she had done. She said her guilt was eating her alive, and she thought I deserved to know before I married him. I sat there in complete shock, not knowing what to say or do. Part of me wanted to scream at her, and part of me wanted to thank her for telling me, but mostly I just felt numb. I told her I needed time to think and left the coffee shop without saying another word. That afternoon I drove straight to the apartment Jake and I shared. My hands were shaking as I unlocked the door, and my mind was racing with what I was going to say to him. Part of me hoped Emma was lying or confused, but deep down I knew she was telling the truth. Jake was in the living room watching TV when I walked in. He looked up and smiled, asking me how the dress fitting went. His casual demeanor made my stomach turn. I sat down across from him and told him we needed to talk about something serious. He muted the TV and asked what was wrong. I took a deep breath and told him that Emma had confessed to sleeping with him during his bachelor week. His face went completely white, and for a split second I saw guilt flash across his features. But then he immediately went into denial mode. He told me that Emma was lying and asked why I would believe her over him. He said Emma had always been jealous of our relationship and was probably trying to sabotage our wedding. He seemed genuinely outraged by the accusation. I wanted to believe him so badly. I asked him to swear on his mother's life that nothing had happened between them. He looked me straight in the eyes and swore that Emma was making everything up. He said he had been with his friends all week and could prove it. For a moment I felt relieved. Maybe Emma was having some kind of breakdown or was jealous like Jake suggested. But something still felt wrong. I asked him to show me his phone to see his recent calls and texts. He hesitated for just a second before handing it over. I scrolled through his messages, but everything looked normal. There were texts to his friends about golf and dinner plans, nothing suspicious. But then I noticed he had deleted all his messages from the past week except for the ones to his friends. When I asked him about it, he said he always deletes old messages to save space. I handed his phone back and told him I believed him. He hugged me and said everything was going to be okay. He said Emma was probably just stressed about the wedding and wasn't thinking clearly. He suggested we should talk to her together to clear everything up. But something was still nagging at me. While Jake was in the bathroom, I decided to look through his wallet. I'm not proud of snooping, but I needed to know the truth. At first, everything looked normal: his driver's license, credit cards, some cash. Then I found it. Tucked behind his credit cards was a hotel key card from the Marriott downtown. The dates printed on it were from this past Monday through today, exactly the time frame Emma had mentioned. My heart sank as I realized what this meant. When Jake came back, I was holding the key card. I asked him to explain why he had been staying at a hotel all week when he was supposed to be hanging out with his friends. His face went pale again and he started stammering. He said one of his friends had booked the room for the group, and he had just been carrying the extra key card. But when I asked which friend, he couldn't give me a straight answer. Then I asked why he hadn't mentioned staying at a hotel when I asked about his week. Jake finally broke down and admitted that he had been at the hotel, but he said he was alone. He said he needed space to think before the wedding and didn't want to worry me. But I knew he was still lying because Emma had been so specific about the details. I told him I knew about Emma, and his whole story fell apart. He started crying and begging me to forgive him. He said it didn't mean anything and that he loved me. He said Emma had seduced him and that he was drunk and confused. I felt sick listening to him try to blame Emma for his choices. I told him to pack his things and get out of our apartment. He kept apologizing and saying we could work through this, but I was done listening. The man I thought I knew had been lying to my face for an entire week. The next morning, I drove to Emma's apartment. I hadn't slept at all and felt like I was moving through a nightmare. I needed to hear the full truth from her, no matter how much it hurt. I also needed to understand how this had happened and why. Emma answered the door looking like she hadn't slept either. Her eyes were red and puffy from crying. She immediately started apologizing again. But I told her I just wanted the truth about everything. We sat on her couch and I asked her to tell me exactly how it all started. She said she had been feeling depressed about being single while watching me plan my perfect wedding. She said she went out Monday night to distract herself and ran into Jake at a bar downtown. She claimed they were both drinking heavily and started talking about the wedding. According to Emma, Jake confessed that he was having cold feet about getting married. She said she was trying to be supportive and listen to his concerns. But then he started saying how beautiful she looked and how he had always found her attractive. She said one thing led to another, and they ended up kissing. Then Jake suggested they get a hotel room because he didn't want to go home to our apartment feeling guilty. Emma said she knew it was wrong, but she was drunk and caught up in the moment. I asked her why it continued for the entire week instead of being just one mistake. She got defensive and said Jake kept calling and texting her. She said he told her he was confused about his feelings and needed to figure things out before the wedding. The way she was telling the story made it sound like Jake had pursued her, and she was just a victim of circumstance. But something about her tone didn't ring true. I asked her if she had any feelings for Jake before this happened, and she hesitated before saying no. While she was in the kitchen getting us water, I noticed her diary sitting open on the coffee table. I know I shouldn't have looked, but I couldn't help myself. What I saw made my blood run cold. The entry was dated from 3 weeks ago, well before Jake's bachelor week. Emma had written about how she was tired of being in my shadow, and how she deserved to be happy too. She wrote about how attractive Jake was, and how she wondered what it would be like to be with him. But the worst part was a detailed plan she had written out. She had planned to run into Jake during his bachelor week. She had researched which bars his friends liked to go to, and had even picked out specific outfits to wear. This wasn't a drunken mistake, it was a calculated seduction. When Emma came back with the water, I confronted her about the diary entry. Her face went white, and she tried to grab the diary from me. I asked her how she could lie to me about this being spontaneous when she had clearly planned the whole thing. She broke down completely and admitted that she had been jealous of my relationship with Jake for months. She said she felt like I got everything I wanted while she struggled with dating and her career. She said she convinced herself that if Jake really loved me, he wouldn't be tempted by her. I asked her if she had any idea how much damage she had caused. Not only had she destroyed my relationship and upcoming wedding, but she had ruined our sisterly bond. She said she thought maybe Jake would realize he didn't want to marry me, and they could be together instead. The level of betrayal was overwhelming. This wasn't just about sleeping with my fiancé. She had actively plotted to steal him from me. She had watched me plan my wedding for months while secretly scheming to destroy it. I told her I never wanted to see her again and left her apartment. 2 days later, I found myself standing at the wedding venue at 2 p.m., 2 hours before the ceremony was supposed to start. The space looked absolutely beautiful, exactly as I had envisioned it months ago. The flowers were perfect, the chairs were arranged in neat rows, and the altar was decorated with white roses and greenery. But instead of getting ready in my wedding dress, I was wearing a simple black dress and preparing to tell 150 guests that there would be no wedding today. My wedding planner, Sarah, had helped me contact the immediate family members and wedding party earlier that morning, but most of the guests were still expecting to see me walk down the aisle. The hardest part was watching people arrive in their beautiful outfits, carrying gifts and looking excited for the celebration. My college friends had flown in from different states. Jake's family had driven up from Florida. Everyone had taken time off work and spent money on travel and accommodations. My parents arrived first, looking confused and concerned. I had told them there was a problem but hadn't given them details over the phone. When I explained what had happened with Emma and Jake, my mother immediately went into damage control mode. She said we could work through this as a family, and that I was making a mistake by calling off the wedding. My father was quieter but seemed more understanding. He asked me if I was sure about my decision, and I told him I had never been more certain of anything in my life. He hugged me and said he was proud of me for standing up for myself. As more guests arrived, I realized I needed to address everyone at once rather than having individual conversations. Sarah helped me set up a microphone at the front of the ceremony space. By 3:30, most of the guests had arrived and were seated, expecting the ceremony to begin soon. I walked to the front and took the microphone. The room got quiet, and I could see confusion on people's faces since I clearly wasn't in a wedding dress. I took a deep breath and told everyone that there would be no wedding today due to circumstances that had recently come to light. I explained that I had discovered my fiancé had been unfaithful during the week leading up to our wedding, and that I could not in good conscience marry someone who had betrayed my trust so completely. I didn't mention Emma specifically, but I said the betrayal had come from someone very close to me. The room was completely silent. I could see shock and sympathy on most faces. A few people started crying, including my grandmother. I thanked everyone for traveling to be there, and for their love and support over the years. I said I hoped they could understand my decision, and that I was sorry for any inconvenience. Jake's mother stood up and asked if there was any way to work things out. She said Jake was devastated and wanted to make things right. I told her that some betrayals couldn't be forgiven, and that I deserved better than someone who would cheat on me days before our wedding. After I finished speaking, people started coming up to hug me and offer their support. Many of my friends said they were proud of me for having the courage to call off the wedding rather than going through with it for the wrong reasons. A few people asked about Emma, and I just said she wouldn't be there. The venue coordinator helped coordinate getting the flowers and decorations to people who wanted them. My aunt took most of the centerpieces for her garden club. The caterer had already been paid, so they donated the food to a local homeless shelter. By 6 p.m. the venue was empty except for me, my parents, and Sarah. I sat in one of the chairs and looked at the beautiful space one last time. It was exactly what I had dreamed of, but I felt nothing but relief that I hadn't gone through with the ceremony. 1 week later, my mother called and asked me to come to family dinner on Sunday. She said Emma would be there, and that it was time for our family to heal and move forward. I told her I wasn't ready to see Emma, but she insisted that we needed to work through this together. Against my better judgment, I agreed to go. I thought maybe enough time had passed that I could at least be civil for the sake of family peace. I also wanted to see if Emma had any genuine remorse for what she had done. When I arrived at my parents' house, Emma was already there sitting at the kitchen table with my mother. She looked up when I walked in, and I could see she had been crying. My mother immediately started talking about how we were all family and needed to forgive each other. I sat down but didn't say anything to Emma. My mother served dinner and kept trying to make normal conversation, but the tension in the room was obvious. Finally, Emma spoke up and said she wanted to apologize again. She said she had been seeing a therapist and was working on understanding why she had made such terrible choices. She said she realized she had been jealous of me for years and had acted out in the worst possible way. She said she never expected Jake to actually leave me for her. And when he didn't, she realized how much she had destroyed for nothing. She said she missed me and wanted to find a way to rebuild our relationship. My mother jumped in and said that family was the most important thing and that we needed to forgive each other. She said Emma had made a mistake, but she was young and had learned her lesson. She said I was being too harsh by cutting Emma out of my life completely. I listened to both of them, but I felt myself getting angrier instead of more forgiving. Emma's apology felt hollow, and my mother's pressure to forgive felt manipulative. I realized they both expected me to just get over the betrayal and pretend it never happened. I told them that Emma hadn't just made a mistake. She had planned to seduce my fiancé and destroy my wedding. I said the diary entry proved it was premeditated, not a moment of weakness. Emma started crying and said she was a different person now. My mother said I was being vindictive, and that holding grudges would only hurt me in the long run. She said Emma was my sister and that nothing should come between family. I realized that neither of them truly understood the depth of the betrayal or respected my right to set boundaries. I stood up and told them that I was done with this conversation. I said Emma had made her choices and now I was making mine. I told my mother that I wouldn't be coming to family dinners if Emma was going to be there, and I wouldn't be changing my mind about this. My mother got upset and said I was tearing the family apart. I told her that Emma had already done that when she decided to sleep with my fiancé. I said I deserved better than being pressured to forgive someone who had shown no real remorse and would probably do something similar again. I left my parents' house feeling sad but also relieved. I realized that my family's reaction showed me who they really were and what they valued. They cared more about maintaining the appearance of family unity than supporting me through one of the most difficult times in my life. Epilogue. It's been 6 months since the wedding that never happened, and I can honestly say I've never been happier. Calling off that wedding was the best decision I ever made. I'm living in a new apartment across town, and I've thrown myself into building my event planning business. Ironically, my experience has made me better at my job. I understand now how important it is to really know the person you're marrying, and I help my clients have honest conversations about their relationships during the planning process. Several couples have thanked me for helping them work through issues before their wedding day. I haven't spoken to Emma since that family dinner, and I don't miss the drama she brought into my life. My mother occasionally sends guilt trip texts about family unity, but I've learned to ignore them. My father and I have maintained our relationship, and he respects my boundaries about Emma. Jake tried to contact me a few times in the first month, but I blocked his number. I heard through mutual friends that he and Emma tried dating briefly, but it didn't work out. Apparently, their relationship was only exciting when it was forbidden and destructive. The best part of this whole experience has been discovering who my real friends are. The people who supported my decision to call off the wedding are still in my life, and our relationships are stronger than ever. I've also started dating again and met someone wonderful who values honesty and loyalty as much as I do. People sometimes ask if I regret not trying to work things out with Jake, but I never do. A person who would cheat on me with my own sister days before our wedding isn't someone I could ever trust again. I deserve better, and now I know it.